like it, actually, if you feel a certain empathy for the villain, even if you don't particularly like him. And even the murderee. You know, Christie was so good at dotting suspects about for the person that was killed that it came again down to a question of why is this person still walking around if everybody hated him?
Yes.
And, you know, and so you don't really feel any loss, you know, when the person dies. And I think it can have a lot of impact when the person who's the victim is somebody that you actually miss.
No.
You don't go for that?
I don't go for that.
Yeah, well,
no.
I have noticed that you're pretty good at just whacking them off, so to speak, when you do the books. So back to Hamish. You have this ghastly woman in Death of a Gossip on a fishing school, and she ends up peculiarly dead. And this is launching Hamish's career as the village Bobby Sleuth.
Yes, the thing that was a great disappointment was the television series.
No.
Well, as said before, it was infanticide. You create a 6-foot-tall, laid-back Highland policeman, and they portray a 5'8" Glaswegian with a chip in his shoulder. Oh. And the whole point of the books was they were Highland. They run on a different track to the Lowland Scot. It is not the same. And Robert Carlyle, who played Hamish Macbeth, he's a fine actor. He could have done a Highland accent, but they insisted that he insisted that he smoked pot, and said he'd leave the series if he wasn't allowed to smoke pot.
You mean as part of the series?
As part of the series.
That's not Hamish Macbeth.
And I was asked why I was so anti-pot smoking, and I said because I find people who campaign for pot smoking to be legalized, unless they're suffering from MS or something that it relieves the pain, they are so boring. And also, if you're a Highland policeman in his mid-30s and you need to break the law to get off the planet by smoking pot, then you're a moral coward. And you can't have that. The element in Hamish Macbeth was basic decency.
Right.
And a basic socializing with people, enjoying conversation and company. If you smoke pot, it's rather an isolating thing because you get all silly and giggly. And I objected to it. And I objected to the fact that the stories were not like mine at all. The characters went, they changed all the names.
You have to ask why they bought the series.
God knows. And it was a great disappointment. The Agatha Raisin one was almost a television series, but it didn't go anywhere. Penelope Keith, who was in To the Manor Born, was desperate to play Agatha Raisin. And I would have loved her to play Agatha Raisin. I think she would have been perfect.
She would have been absolutely wonderful, and that would be a difficult character to do, because she is in many ways so prickly and unlikable, and yet there again she has that sort of basic, in the end, decency or charm or something that bails her out.
What inspired me was the Lucia and Mrs. Mapp books.
Oh, the Benson
E.F.
books.
Benson books. Because I thought, it was Hope Delden asked me if I'd do a Cotswold detective story, and I wanted something different from Hamish Macbeth. And so I wondered if it was possible to have a character that you don't really like much, but you like to succeed in the end. And that was how I created Agatha Raisin.
That's very interesting. I had wondered why, you know, you do make her so difficult to like, and yet she's a survivor. Maybe that's the quality in her that I admire, is that, you know, even though life beats her down and things don't come out right, either professionally or her foiled romance with her neighbor James Lacey, which is ongoing and all, somehow she seems to survive at the end and sort of bounce back, you know, for another round.
Well, that's what I hope to bring across. And of course she can say all these things I'd never say to people who upset her, because I regret to say I smoke. I do smoke. And I did admire, up in the Highlands, was the head of the Sutherland Press. He was out in a restaurant with his wife, and there's a big glass ashtray on the table, so they lit up. The people behind them started So he called over the head waiter and said, "Could you find these people another table? They're bothering me."
Good for him. mother would be cheering. I am a non-smoker, so I'd
So
been the cougher.
so that was a sort of Agatha type
Right.
thing.
But
that
that's, you know, that often British novels, I think, to an American audience, people speak more forthrightly. Then Americans have, you know, a tremendous urge to be liked, and oftentimes are not as blunt in conversation.
The thing of all the same is when it comes to traveling and hotels, it is so nice, this American thing of good manners. Isn't it amazing? A lot of British would think they were the ones with the good manners, but wrong. It's the Americans who have the good manners.
Well, I've found over the years, because I've traveled so much in England, that there's a basic feeling in England, which I've often thought was part of, I'll do my brief social analysis here and then we'll move on, part of the class system, that the attitude is they're doing you a favor to let you come in. You know, there's this always kind of, you know, you're lucky that we let you come here. And Americans are more brought up, at least in business, to cater to the customer. You know, the customer is always right, the old Marshall Field tenant and so forth, but we're much more inclined to feel that the customer is doing us a favor to come to the business, not that the business is doing the customer a favor by letting them in.
You can get parts of the States all the same, but that's not true. When we were working down in the wrong side of the tracks in Virginia, a lot of anti-British got called a limey. And you know, a lot of anti-British
Well, I wasn't thinking about it anti-British so much as just sort of a general mindset. I remember, for example, trying to get my library card at the Bodleian, which is a really nightmare experience. But their entire attitude is that they are the gatekeepers of this incredible institution, and if you're really lucky, and if you really dot all the I's and cross the T's, and you know, are a proper supplicant, they will let you have a ticket. And that is the attitude I'm talking about, you know. And in America, you know, it's much more, people are much more inclined to, you know, to make it easy for a patron to want to use
well, you see,
facility.
America has a long history of business.
Right.
For example, after the Gulf War, the American business, you know, for the restoration of Kuwait, the American businessmen were over there personally. The British business sent faxes.
Why am I not surprised?
And this has gone on, that Britain lasted a long time with the empire, but it started back in Victorian times that the Americans would do the hard business sell. And it's not conning or tricking I'm talking about, it's just to sell, you want it, we've got it, here it is.
And we'll make it easy for you.
And we'll make it easy for you. The British motto is, it's not as easy as that, you know.
Exactly.
And the other thing in a shop, why don't you stock such and such? Oh, we kept selling out of it. You know what I mean?
No, I
you
do.
get the point.
There's a native obstructiveness,
There's
I think.
a native obstructiveness.
And I think that people enjoy, there was a point to all this, I wasn't just rambling off. I think that a lot of readers enjoy your books, the Agatha Raisins in particular, but even the Hamish Macbeths, because of that. You know, there's a certain bite to the conversation. There's a certain bloody-mindedness, you know, involved. Agatha doesn't make things easy, and Hamish, in fact, can get himself in that position, and I think American readers enjoy that.
Well, the obstructiveness in Britain does get you to the fact that you quite often end up punching through things, you know.
Right.
And saying, look, are you going to do this or not, you know? That being an ex-reporter comes in very handy, because sometimes it's multiple phone calls to get one thing done that you would take for granted in America.
Well, people are not there to smooth your path.
No,
you know.
no, they're there to make it difficult.
Yes, I think so. And of course, with Hamish, that comes up in the police force. He not only has that, you know, aspect in the villains and in the village, but there's a lot of bloody-mindedness among the constabulary as well. You know, so he has to buck that. And one of his ongoing, I don't know how you're ever going to resolve this, but one of the things that you've danced with in that whole series all this time is that Hamish doesn't really want to leave the village and doesn't really want to rise in his profession. He's lazy, so he wants to be the Bobby, and he wants, you know, but he can't go on forever. You know, life doesn't let you do that normally.
But it isn't life, it's unreality.
Well, there you are.
He'll never get old.